I'm Zach Normandin. We're here today with Heartbreak Hill.
Tell me about your history as a snowboarder.
So, started a long time ago actually. I'm 27, but I got started, I guess, skiing when I was super young, like can't even remember, like 2. My parents are both big skiers. So just been in the mountains, you know, since we were kids.
Yeah.
Then I vividly remember the first day I saw somebody go down on a snowboard and I just go, I want to do that. And literally, like, I think probably that night, my dad took me to Play It Again Sports.
Nice.
It's like a big thing at the time.
I remember those.
Got a U setup. Thing was set up directional, which is like more nose than tail. So it's more like for riding. I ride a directional now. I set my board up directional, which is funny. But at the time, it looked weird. So I went off snowboarding at Neshoba in Massachusetts, and I'm just watching these other kids go down. And I'm like, why is my tail so small, but my nose is big? Because I was riding regular, like that's how I surf, that's how I skateboard.
Yep.
And then I saw those kids, so I just flipped around. So I learned how to snowboard goofy, even though I was regular. And then I would just go to Neshoba every day after school till like they kicked us off the hill. Couldn't get enough of it. And then my dad would take me on weekend trips all the time, Loon, Waterville. And Waterville, I guess, was kind of like my coming out to the snowboard world. Whereas like at the time, all these big names, Chaz Gouldemont, Pat Moore, Scotty Lego, were all riding up there. And it's a rope tow, and you can see all these dudes just crushing it. You know, it was mind blowing at the time, being like a young impressionable kid and like seeing these guys just hitting these jumps. And I'm like, you know, I remember watching that kid snowboard, and then I remember watching them hit those jumps. I'm like, I want to do that. And then it just kind of went on from there. I just rode every day, and I remember I was doing back sevens. I think I was like 13. Back sevens off the big jump at Waterville, and this coach, who was now, he turned to the he became an Olympic coach. Okay. But at the time he was coaching the like super prestigious Waterville Valley Academy.
Okay, yeah.
Came out to my dad, he's like, we need your son. He needs to be involved in the academy, he's gonna be a pro snowboarder. And that's the first time I'd never even thought of being like making snowboarding a career or it being any more than just fun.
Yeah.
And basically, long story short, I was like too shy to go to the academy. Like it just wouldn't work. But then, you know, years down the road, I started traveling with Greg Maxwell, who is a former pro snowboarder, absolute psychopath madman. But you know, he kind of took me. I think Bill said the best. He's like, you know, you're a good snowboarder. He's like, you just need to go to the right places. It was being put in front of the right people, the right places, and that was a big thing to start traveling out west. And then I guess I kind of, you know, caught the eye of some, you know, potential sponsors, being Volcom, which was literally the company I wanted to ride for my entire life. Back when, you know, sending a sponsor me tape was the thing, my mom took me to the post office in our hometown, sent out the DVD, sent it to like every company, and Volcom was the only one that wrote me back. And they're like, Zach, like you're a ripper, but our team's full. Just, you know, keep working hard. And you know, like sure enough, like 2 years later, I signed my first contract with Volcom after this event called The Launch, which is basically like an 18 and younger photo shoot where they build like the biggest park features you've pretty much ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's just 5 days of just progressive riding, filming, and basically after that event, they're like, yeah, you know, you're ours.
That's it.
And things kind of went on from there. I you know,
How old were you then?
I think I was probably 16 or 17. And then, you know, started traveling a lot more, going to California, you know, got to go overseas, contest, and yeah, wouldn't trade it for anything. And it also like just kind of helped me as a person.
Yeah.
Like high school was never my thing. I didn't have any friends in high school, but like snowboarding is, I guess, like where I came out of my shell as a person, you know, and like develop friendships that I'll have forever.
Yep.
And yeah, so, you know, and still to this day, I still get just as excited to go snowboarding.
Yeah.
You know, so it hasn't really lost that, you know, that feeling for me, which is kind of special for sure.
Have you ever represented the United States in competition?
No, I've not. That was a big goal of mine. when I was doing a lot of contests was to go to the Olympics.
International individual events anyway too, right?
Yeah, like I've gone to China to compete and stuff, but I never, I guess technically like represented the states as one of their riders. But I guess you kind of are, with all the international guys and stuff, like being from the United States. That was cool.
What's the craziest place you've snowboarded?
For sure, Europe.
Yeah.
Stayed in Austria for a couple months. Volcom had a team house there, and just the lifestyle in general is just amazing. The people are super friendly. Everyone's into the sport. Everyone does it. And the terrain that you can access from a chairlift, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You're just basically looking, at what you're doing going up, and you're like, okay, like that. There's a cliff. There's a jump spot. You go up. You can do all that stuff in a day. And then the app racing was obviously, quite spectacular, yeah, to say the least.
Nice. As a pro snowboarder, which athletes do you look up to?
When I was younger, it was, I guess it was a lot of, at the time, Instagram wasn't a huge thing. So it was mostly from like videos. So like some of my favorites were like Shane Flood, who's actually from Massachusetts, which was rad because I'm like, oh no, this guy did it, and he was in all these huge videos, had pro model everything, and then Scotty Lego, he was, just a kid from New Hampshire that went to the Olympics. Bronze medalist, yeah. Pat Moore was a big one. Greg Maxwell, and now it's like, that I'm older, I guess, it's like I'm still inspired, but I guess it's more from like my close friends and people I go riding with, who I still like, hold on a high accolade, but it's not like, kind of someone I'm like, worshiping and watching all these videos. It's someone you're riding with. I'm like, oh, they're really killing it. It's like, okay, I want to do better now. So I would say it's a little different from when I was younger, but still, it's a lot of the same guys that inspired me back then, still do.
Totally. So you're a surfer, skater,
yep.
Professional snowboarder, rode for Volcom for a while.
Yep.
And you have also run the Boston Marathon. I don't know how
Correct.
many athletes have
yeah.
have done those four things and been a sponsored action sports athlete and run the Boston Marathon.
True.
Talk about what inspired you to want to run the Boston Marathon?
Yeah, so it was kind of complex, I guess. I had cancer, at this point it'll be 2 years ago, just about. And running was never, I've always been an athlete, but running was just never on my docket. I never really experienced I had run before, but probably nothing over a few miles. And very sporadic, I was never like on this like training regimen. And, I got diagnosed with cancer. And my girlfriend at the time was very big into running. She had run a couple marathons. And I was in the hospital starting out for about probably like 20 days. And I came out feeling like just the weakest I've ever felt. Yeah. Nothing I've ever experienced, just like mentally, physically, everything, just zeroed out. And at the time, we were living in Cambridge, and she was like, okay, I'm gonna go for a run. And I'm like, I'll come with you. I never have experienced anything like this in my life. I remember just going maybe half a mile, and I thought someone was gonna have to scrape me off the streets of Boston. It was unbelievable. I was feeling so bad, so nauseous. The chemo just wiped me out. And
it's a tough time to start running.
I just remember I was so mad at myself for doing so poorly. I'm like, I'll never be this weak again. And then the next day I just ran a little bit further, and then it kind of went on. But at that point, the marathon wasn't even, there was no way I thought I could do it. And as things progressed, through cancer treatment and stuff, I continued to work out and run. And I'm like, hey, I think I can do this. And one of my good friends at Sam Adams, we were literally just chatting at a bar, and she's like, we have 4 extra spots. Would you want one of them? Yeah. At that point, my fate was basically sealed. And, after treatment and everything, me and my girlfriend had broken up, and I kind of just like stopped any bit of training, literally didn't do anything, lost all motivation. And then one day I'm like, hey, living like that, wasn't gonna go on, but it wasn't sustainable. So I kind of like picked myself up, and I'm like, okay, I'm really gonna do this. And to be quite honest, like that was one of the first things maybe I've ever done that was just completely for me. Not to say like I'm out snowboarding to impress all these people, but there's, always been maybe a little bit of pressure, like, okay, like, no one looks at me as a runner, like no one has any preconceived notions of what I'm gonna do. So it's one of the few times where it's just sole focus on, I'm just doing this to prove to myself I can do it. I know I can, and I'm just gonna do it, like prove to myself I'm over cancer. I've completed that journey, and I'm just gonna, cross the finish line and just kind of put that in the rear view.
Yeah, and you did.
Yeah, and I did, yeah. By the grace of God, somehow, yeah.
How, anything surprise you about the experience? What did the act of running Boston?
I think before, the night before, it was like, I kind of felt like what we used to call them, like, the pre-contest jitters, like you couldn't really sleep. It was like, kind of felt like that, even though I'm like, I didn't really have any skin in the game. Like if I just stepped over the start line and went back home, like I don't think anyone's gonna be calling me freaking out,
Right.
But I was still like, like nervous. I'm like, am I gonna be able to finish? Am I gonna be able to do good? Then once I got there, it was just, I guess the energy of everyone was not necessarily surprising, but it's nothing like I've ever felt. And everyone's like, just wait, like once you start running, like the people, like you won't be able to stop.
Right.
Which is true. I remember like, we get going, I'm like, oh my God, like you're just like pumped up.
Yeah.
And I had trained at a, I wouldn't say like a marathon pace. And I'm just like, well, my body feels good. Everything is just like working like a well-oiled machine. I could not believe it. And people are screaming for you. It was just insane. And then crossing, rounding the corner till when you see the finish line was just unreal. The energy was like something that just totally surprised me. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And it felt like, like the city's kind of awake again after just such a rough couple years. It was insane to me.
Yeah. Let's see. Can you talk about, are you okay, Kevin? Okay. Can you talk about how you leveraged the experience of running for Boston to support your friend?
Yeah. So I ended up getting the bib as it was, I didn't have to do any fundraising. They paid for me to do it, but I still kind of, wanted to fundraise, and I was kind of going back and forth because, obviously I had cancer, so it wouldn't make sense for me to fundraise for cancer research. And I was going to, there's a couple of different organizations that I was talking to about doing some fundraising. And if, if I had it my way, I would, be fundraising for everybody and, change the world. But it's like, there's only so much one person can do. And one of my good friends, he was an amazing snowboarder, amazing athlete, like a sweet, super polite, young kid, was in a bad accident, diving into a pool. This had to have been probably like 2 years ago now, and, left him paralyzed, which was, heartbreaking. And, I've known his dad and his mother, and so he was getting some support for like a lot of our friends. And, snowboarding is definitely pretty tight knit when you think about it, especially around here. Everyone kind of knows everybody. So one, I really, wanted to help this, this kid out as much as I could. And I thought I would just have more of a reach within the snowboard community. I think people respected the fact that I was running the marathon, and especially, trying to raise some money for River. So I think it made, more of an impact than maybe running for a charity that not as many people had heard of, or, the money just physically went straight to his treatment. And, so I thought that was definitely special for me. And talking to his dad on the phone, he was super excited, and then he went straight over and told River, and he was very excited for me to run for him. So no, it's definitely a special experience for sure.
Yeah. Could you just talk about, what that idea, Rise to the Moment, means to you?
Yeah, when I saw that on the companion, I thought that was super rad because, it can be, I guess something different for everybody. Everyone has their moment, whatever that may be, if it's in your job or school or athletics. For me, mine was pretty bold, cancer. I'm like, you kind of, it's like that there's, one option really. It's to, fight, get better. It's like, there's no plan B, like that, I guess, was my moment. But it can mean so many different things. I think that's cool. It's like, I was talking to a lot of people like you and some of my friends who have run it, gone through some stuff, and, their insight was pretty inspirational. And, whatever their moment is or yours have been, it's like about just doing it, I guess. Yeah. Like writing your goals down and figuring this thing out and, putting boots on the ground and getting it done.
Yeah.